Well, it's almost Christmas, and if you're wanting a Christmas sermon, come back next week. We're in Ecclesiastes chapter 6. So if you got a Bible, open up to Ecclesiastes chapter 6. We'll be there for the day, and then we'll take a brief hiatus next week, talk about Jesus, talk about Christmas, talk about the birth, and it'll be fun, it'll be good, and please come back and join us. I don't know if they were going to do a children's sermon. I'm sorry if I cut you off.
No, that's okay.
Okay. All right. Good deal. I'll wait a second. So Ecclesiastes chapter 6, what Solomon has been doing, he's doing what we all want to do, and he's searching for satisfaction. He's searching for happiness. He's searching for joy. These are what we want in life, right? We want to be happy. We want to be content. We want to have this spirit of joy. We want to be just happy. And Solomon, he's been searching for this, and he's been struggling. He's really struggling. And what he's going to do, he's going to take, unbeknownst to this guy later on, but there's this guy who lives in the 17th and 18th century. So he lives from like 1680 something or something like that to 1700 something. I can't remember the exact dates. But this guy, his name is Joseph Addison. He's this British guy, and he writes poetry, he's an essays, and he is a playwright, and then later on he becomes a politician. And he is recorded as saying, and I've looked up as much as I could, and I can't find the exact source of it, but the quote is attributed to this guy, Joseph Addison. It's that the three grand essentials to happiness are something to do, something to love, and something to hope for. And what Solomon is going to do, he's going to look at each of those things, the something to do, love, and hope for, and he's going to look at versions of those, and unsurprisingly, he's going to come up unsatisfied. He's going to look at this and go, this doesn't work. These things that they promise to do bring happiness. They do not fulfill their form of the contract. They promise happiness and they don't bring it. They leave me unsatisfied. They leave me without joy, without happiness, without contentment. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to look at each of those three things that Solomon looks at and look at how and why they leave him unsatisfied. But with Ecclesiastes, there's one thing we must remember, have in the forefront of our minds when we're looking through this, and this is how he starts off the chapter. There is an evil that I have seen under the sun. Now, what he's going to look at, it's a terrible thing. Being unsatisfied is awful because that is what we want. We want to be happy. We want to be filled with joy. We want to be content. And he's going to look at it and say, you can't find it. You will only be unsatisfied, and that is a great evil under the sun. And that's the key word, under the sun. This is limited to this earth without God. If we make our search for happiness and something to do, love, and hope for only to this physical realm, we will be left unsatisfied. And he says, and it lies heavy on mankind. It's this heavy burden. It's something you have to lug along if you realize that you are unsatisfied. Now, a great movie, if you guys have not seen it, is the Back to the Future movie back in 1985, and then a couple movies after that. And there's a phrase in there that Marty McFly, the main character, Michael J. Fox, he uses over and over. It is, "Ooh, that's heavy, Doc." And he goes back to 1955, hangs out with this really smart guy, and he's, talking about all the ramifications of what's going on with going back in time and everything. And he says, "Woo, that's heavy, Doc." In 1955, Doc Brown responds with, that's that word again. You keep heavy. Why are things so heavy in the future? Is there a problem with the Earth's gravitational pull? He's wondering. It's this not a physical heavy, but a emotional heavy where you're, man, that really weighs me down, really bogs it down. And there's a little bit of comedy in there, but Solomon doesn't look at it as a comedic element. He looks at it as a great evil, something that is to be mourned. And these three versions that Solomon is going to look at, with something to do, he's going to look at wealth. And with something to love, he's going to look at longing. And with something to hope for, he's going to find silence. And so with each of those, we're going to look at why and how they leave him unsatisfied. So here it is. The first one, it is the insecurity of wealth. And if you're here last week, if you look at the passage prior to this, you're going to realize, if you're going to look at this, Solomon has been full of wealth does not secure you. Whether the money itself and the possessions and the just collection itself is very flaky, it can be lost in a moment in a bad venture, or somebody can come steal it, or it doesn't provide security for your life. We're all going to die. It doesn't make you live longer. You can't take it with you. This money is found to be insecure and insufficient, and Solomon is left unsatisfied. With the 3 grand essentials, this is something to do. Collect wealth. Be wealthy. Get stuff. This is the something to do, and Solomon is going to find out it is unsatisfactory. Here is what it is, and he's going to look at a couple versions of wealth. But the first one is the obvious one. Look at verse 2. He says, a man to whom, he says, listen, there's a great evil, and this evil is a man to whom God gives wealth, possessions, honor, so that he lacks nothing of all he desires, yet God does not give him the power to enjoy them. But instead a stranger enjoys them. This is a vanity. It is a grievous evil. He says, here's an evil, a man who's got it all, but he can't enjoy it. And it's a grievous evil. I mean, he's got money. He's got physical money that you have store up in a bank, the dollar bills and the zeros. And then he also has wealth, possessions. He's got a big house. He's got a big flat screen TV. He's got the fanciest couch. He's got the $800 little coffee table that I don't know why you would pay that much for a coffee table, but he's got it. If he wants something, he goes and he buys it. And also on top of that, he's popular. He has honor. Everybody likes this guy. He's got money, he's got wealth, he's got stuff, he's got friends, he's got everything, and yet, for one reason or another, he has not the ability to enjoy it. And I really like what it says. If there's something he desires, he's got it. If he wants it, he buys it. Now, right around Christmas time, my dad is always talking about, and I'm the same way, I don't know what to give for gifts. I'm awful at gift giving and gift receiving. I don't know what to give you. I don't know how to react to what you give me. Yay! That's how I react on Christmas Day. Appreciate it. I don't know. But my dad, he's always talking about, what am I going to get my dad? So he's talking about my grandpa, Charlie. He's wondering, what can he get Grandpa Charlie? Because Grandpa Charlie, if he wants something, you know what he does? He goes and he buys it. If he needs something, you know what he does? He goes and he buys it. So what do you buy a man that buys whatever he wants and has everything he needs? And the answer is not much. I mean, he has no idea what to do. And that's the picture of this man. He's got money stored up. He keeps on gaining more money. He's got a great retirement plan. And he gets monthly checks on however much. And he's got everything. It's set in stone. He has everything in order to be satisfied. All of the money to be content in life. And yet, for whatever reason, whether it be illness or a malady or we don't know what, God does not allow him. And God does not grant him the ability to enjoy it. We don't know if God's being a jerk here. We don't know if God just simply, this is just something that happens. We don't know. All we know is that this guy does not enjoy, does not find happiness in his something to do, in his collecting of wealth. And it's a vanity and a great evil. It's like chasing after the wind, trying to catch wind in a bottle. It just does not work. And instead, a stranger enjoys the money and the possessions and the stuff that he has heaped up. Instead of, because we've got family, right? We've got kids, grandkids, siblings, people that we know and love. And when we die, we're going to give them some of our money, right? Everybody follow along? When I die, somebody's getting my money. Whenever you die, somebody's getting your money. And you put it in your will that your kid or your grandkid or your sister or somebody is going to get your money that you love so that you can help them. And this guy dies and he doesn't even have the joy of helping somebody else. Instead, he watches some stranger come along and take his money rather than helping a family member, a loved one. And it leaves him unsatisfied. So now he's going to look at a different version of wealth. This is the physical money and wealth and possessions that we view as wealth. But now he's going to look at something else. Verse 3. If a man fathers 100 children, it's a bit of an exaggeration if you ask me, but 100 children and lives many years so that the days of his years are many, but his soul is not satisfied with life's good things, and he also has no burial, I say that a stillborn child is better off than he. Now, we got to understand a little bit of culture right here, because this is a form of wealth for the Jewish people. Ways that they measured being blessed by God were physical, money, possessions, things like that, and life. Whether it be your own long life or your family's long life, that is how you are blessed by God. That is how you are shown to, that's how you are wealthy. Whether you have a bunch of stuff or you have a lot of life in your years and in your children. And this guy's got long life and 100 children. He's got it all, and yet he does not find satisfaction with life's good things. He is left unsatisfied with this wealth in the form of life. His life is long, got a long life, is doing well, got a lot of kids, and it just doesn't work out for him. And he points out that he has no burial. And that's an odd little saying right there. But what he's getting at is whenever this guy dies, nobody goes and puts him in the grave except for the mortician and the gravedigger. Those are the only people who show up to the funeral. That's it. His family doesn't show up. He's got 100 kids, but they're not there to bury him. Who knows how many people he has in his life, but none of them show up to the funeral, and he's buried like a pitiable throwaway person. Now, to give you an idea, if you're a rich man, if you got a lot of family, if you got a lot of people that love you, you're going to have a huge funeral. Can we talk about Elvis Presley for a minute? Anybody like Elvis music? Nobody else, just me? Cool. So Elvis Presley died back in the 70s, right? And whenever he dies, there are 30,000 people inside the building at his funeral. And then people watching the cars drive by, 80,000 people on top of that. So I don't know if they were the same 30 or that's 100-ish thousand people at one guy's funeral. And I'm going to tell you, there are more people that wish they could have been there that weren't there. Now, that's the kind of funeral you expect out of a man who is beloved by many people. This guy, he's got hundreds of kids. He's got a long life, a lot of friends. He has collected friends and people in his life that he has given life to, and yet he has no burial. Two people show up, the mortician and the gravedigger, and he is in a rough situation. Now, there's a musical artist that I like. Her name is Regina Spektor. She's a quirky, odd kind of music. She just plays the piano and sings over it. If you're interested in some weird, quirky, funny music, she's got it. But she has one song where she tells a little bit of a story, and the lyrics are this. What if one of these days your heart will just stop ticking and they sort of just don't find you until your cubicle is reeking? That's this guy. He's not found until they go, oh man, what is that smell? And they go and just, oh, he died. He's got no burial. It is the epitome of nobody caring. And this guy, even though he has a long life in his own words and life among his children, he is wealthy in that sense, but dies an ugly death. And here's the odd part that some of you guys are going to be disturbed by. He says that this man is worse off than a stillborn, a miscarried baby. Now, can we just talk about this for a second? Everybody knows somebody or been in your family, whether it's you or your friend or some acquaintance, somebody who has had a miscarriage, somebody who has had a child and then it just doesn't make it. Whether it dies before the birth or whether it dies within just a few minutes or a year or two before they can grow up and have a full life. It's a terrible thing. This is what leaves people with questions and depression and just, they have no idea where to go, what to do with life. Anybody else know what I'm talking about? Where this is just, how do we recover from this? How do we deal with this depressing, horrible scene? And Solomon says, trust me, that kid, he's better off. That child that never sees the light of day, he's better off than the man who has wealth but cannot enjoy that wealth. And the next couple verses describe a little bit of why. Here's verses 4 and 5. For it comes, the child, the stillborn baby, comes in vanity. It comes in vanity, it's meaningless. It has no life. It doesn't do anything in this life. It doesn't flourish, doesn't grow up. It comes in vanity and goes in darkness, and in darkness its name is covered up. It's where the parents would name the child and have this great life for this child. They say, he came from darkness, from the womb, which is dark, and then comes into the world and never sees the light of day. From darkness to darkness, and the name is put into the ground in the belly of the earth into darkness. In verse 5, moreover, it has not seen the sun or known anything. This child never sees the light of day, and yet it has rest rather than the man who has wealth but cannot enjoy it. If you have stuff in this life, whether it be physical possessions or family and life in your own personal experience, Solomon says, God says, what I'm telling you is that if you do not enjoy the things that God has given you, then you are worse off than a miscarried child. You are worse off because the child finds rest. The child doesn't have to deal with the junk in this life. The child doesn't have to deal with the pain that is found in this life. The child gets to go on to the next life where we are stuck in this life, dealing with our unsatisfaction with our wealth, dealing with the terrible things that happen in this life. He says the miscarried child is better off than you if you do not enjoy your wealth. And here's the last verse in this section, verse 6. Even though he should live 1,000 years. This is back to the man. Listen, if you think, no. Trust me, being alive is better than being miscarried. He says, no, listen. Even if a guy lives 1,000 years twice over, if a guy lives 2,000 years, it's huge exaggeration, this incredibly long life. You know what happens to him? No enjoyment, no good. They all go to the same place. He doesn't enjoy those 2,000 years, and he ends up in the grave just like that miscarried child. He says, if you do not enjoy this life, with what wealth you do have, you're better off like the miscarried child because he didn't have to deal with that 2,000 years of unsatisfaction. He says you're going from dust to dust. No matter how great the wealth is, no matter how amazing that something to do is, if you do not enjoy it, if you look for it only under the sun, you will be left unsatisfied. And so that's the first thing. He looks at this terrible thing of this insecurity of wealth and how unsatisfied it will leave you. And then he moves on to the something to love. And this is the longing, and he finds out that it's an insatiable longing. This is something that you're always trying, always going towards, always longing for something more, something else, and yet you're left with this insatiable feeling. And that's a fancy word for being unsatisfied, without satisfaction. You don't be content with what you do have. And Joseph Addison says this is something or someone to love. If you look for it just under the sun, you'll be left with this insatiable longing, wanting more, but never having enough. And here's what Solomon is going to look at with this. He's going to look at working, toiling, and desiring more. So here it is, verse 7. All of the toil of man is for his mouth, and yet his appetite is not satisfied. So this past week, you want to know why you went to work? It's so you could eat. You don't know why you're going to go to work this week? It's so you can eat. You don't know what we're going to do in 20 minutes? We're going to go eat. That is why we are alive. That is why we work. We're here to go eat, right? I'm going to work, and I'm going to make money, and I'm going to spend that money on food so that I can be happy. And I'm going to eat some good food, all right? I'm going to make food. I'm going to cook food. I'm going to buy food. I'm going to have you cook me food, and I'm going to work for it and pay you. All of my work is for food. That's what Solomon says. He says, everybody is working for food. Now, that's what you do. And you know what food is? We looked at this last week. It's an appetite. The more you get, the more you want, right? And if you remember the illustration from last week, it was the hot dog eating contest. They gorge themselves, stretch their stomach so they can eat more on the day of. That's what we're doing. We're eating more and then going, I could really go for some noodles right now. Now, I talked about King of Queens a couple weeks ago. I love King of Queens. Great show. There's an episode where Doug, his best friend, has found this new big guy to be his friend, and Doug is jealous. And so Doug challenges the other guy to a hot wing eating contest, okay? So they go to this restaurant, and they eat hot wings, and his best friend's new friend loses to Doug. And Doug just ate like 8 pounds of hot wings, which I don't know how his mouth is alive or how his stomach can stand it, but he eats this massive amount of hot wings. Afterwards, he wins. He goes, you want to go get some ice cream? I could really go for something sweet right now. No matter how much you eat, you're going to want something else or something more. There's an appetite that grows and grows and grows. And Solomon says no matter how much you long for, whether it be food or stuff or love or whatever, you'll be left longing for more and more and more and more. It is an insatiable longing. It does not leave you satisfied. And here's the next couple things he's going to look at. Verse 8. For what advantage has the wise man over the fool? And what does the poor man have who knows how to conduct himself before the living? He says, listen, if all we're doing in this life is working so that we can eat, then the wise man and the poor man are both working so they can eat. So it does not matter if you're wise or poor. There's no advantage. We're all just working so that we can eat. That's it. We're all just working so that we can have our appetite filled, and then our appetite go away, and then our appetite come back and fill it again. That says that's what we're doing. It doesn't matter if you're wise or poor. That's what you're doing. Therefore, the wise doesn't have an advantage over the poor. And he says, everybody's going to eat. Everybody's going to work to eat. And then he says, and what does the poor man have who knows how to conduct himself before the living? This is the poor man who's thinking, man, those rich people, they got more food than me. And so he's like, I'm going to try and better my life. I'm going to try and get a better job, eat better, have better food, and I'm going to get more money so I can eat better, more food. And what he's going to discover is you're still just working so that you can eat. If you're rich or if you're poor, if you're wise or if you're dumb, you're just working so that you can eat, so it doesn't matter. I mean, he says your longing is always going to be more and more and more and more. One of my favorite Disney movies is the movie Aladdin, okay? One of my favorite lines in that movie is whenever Aladdin, in the very first couple scenes, he steals a loaf of bread, right? And then the guards are all chasing him, and he's singing a song while he's chasing. And then he says this line, gotta eat to live, gotta steal to eat, otherwise we'd get along. And he says, what I'm doing, my work is so that I can eat. So, Aladdin's work was stealing. Your guys' work is going to a job and making money. It is so that you can eat, no matter if you're poor, rich, wise, or foolish. You're still just working so that you can eat. Your longing is always there, wanting more food, more stuff, and it cannot satisfy. Looking for something to love and looking to be loved, but it does not satisfy. Here's the last verse in this little section, verse 9. Better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of the appetite. And this also is vanity and a striving after the wind. This is an ancient version of a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. You heard this little proverb saying? He says, listen, what you do have, no matter how little or how much, it's better than what you could have. Because if I'm looking around, the wandering appetite going, man, look at how much more I could have. Look at the rich person down the road. Look at how nice their life is. I'm longing for that. He says, you're better off to be content with what little bit you do have than wondering what else you could have. You're better off with what you do have rather than with what you could have. And he says, the wandering appetite is no good, and it is a vanity, meaningless, no good, and a striving after the wind. Trying to catch wind in a bottle. It doesn't work. You're striving for more and more and more, wanting more, longing more, thinking how much more I could have. And he says it's meaningless. You are left in the same place, and it is an insatiable longing to be loved, to love others, to have more, to eat more. It is an insatiable longing. So Solomon looks at this and says, you are going to be completely unsatisfied if you look and are longing. You're going to be left with this insatiable longing. Here's the last one. After wealth is deemed insecure and longing is deemed insatiable, and then he has this inquisitive silence. He's going to ask some questions about what's going on in the world, and he's going to find silence. He's going to look for something to hope for, and he's going to find nothing. Silence. No answers to his questions. So before he gets into the questions, he's got to set up and make some observations about what's going on in the world. So here's verse 10. Whatever has come to be has already been named, and it is known what man is, and that he is not able to dispute with one stronger than he. Remember Genesis 1, when God says, let there be light? God has named it, God has done it, and when you name something, it is bringing into its entire character, its entire personality. The thing itself is not, the name is not just a title, the name is the thing itself. It represents and encompasses the entire personality, the entire character of whatever it's being named. And he says, everything in this earth has already been named, it's already existed, you can't change it, and if you want to, well, you are not able to dispute with one greater than you. Does that make sense? God's bigger than you, you're dumber than God, you can't argue with God. Even if you want to, you can't, okay? And then here's what he's going to say. If you really, really want to, here's what will happen. Verse 11, the more words, the more vanity. What advantage is a man? Keep on talking, you're just wasting your breath. Keep on complaining, and you're just wasting your breath. If you're looking for something to hope for, and you just keep talking and asking and going, what's going on? What am I supposed to do? Why? Asking over and over and over again, you are wasting your breath. It is a vanity, and the implied answer to what advantage? There's none. And in fact, it's more of a disadvantage. If you read some Proverbs where Solomon says, the more words, the more vanity, the more words, the more foolish, the more words, the more bad things that happen in your life. Solomon says, when you ask these questions, when you're looking and you're searching, if you're complaining, you're going to be left in silence, and you have more vanity. So here's the deal. Next verse, verse 12, the last verse in this chapter, in this section, he's going to ask two questions. So here they are, Ecclesiastes 6:12. For who knows what is good for man while he lives the few days of his vain life, cheery, chipper Solomon again, few days, vain life, not good, which he passes like a shadow. And for who can tell what will be after him under the sun? So here are the two questions that Solomon asks. What is good and what will happen to me? Okay? I'm wanting something to hope for. If there's something in this life that is good, I want to hope for that. I want to put my faith in that. I want to be trusting in that. And if there's something after this life, what happens to me after I die, I want to put my hope in that. And that's the end of the chapter. There's no answer. God doesn't all of a sudden, hey, by the way, I'm going to send a guy in a couple hundred years. He's going to be the one you're going to put your faith in. He's going to be the one you put your hope in. It's going to be great. No. Solomon is left with silence, this inquisitive silence, and he's left unsatisfied. What is good for me to do? What's going to happen to me after I die? And he's left in a silent treatment. Now, anybody broken a bone before? I broke my collarbone, shattered it up in Michigan, and you know what they did? They take an x-ray, okay, and then they show you the x-ray, and they go, yep, it's broken. What did that x-ray do for me? I'm asking questions. Hey, what happened to me? Oh, you broke a bone. Does that help me get better? No, it just says you're broken. That's what an x-ray does. It just shows you how broken you are. If you're asking, hey, doc, what's wrong with me? And he leaves you in silence, you're in the same boat, and then if he says, hey, doc, what's going on? And he says, oh, you broke your bone, here's the picture. You're in the same boat. You're still just broken. It doesn't give you any help. You're still just there. He asks questions, and Solomon, even if he gets an answer, he's going to be left in the same boat of, I don't know, longing for more, hoping for more, and never finding the thing to hope for. Being inquisitive, questioning life, that's good, but if you limit it to under the sun, it leaves you unsatisfied. Now, you guys can come up and play these 3 grand essentials to happiness, right? Something to do, something to love, and something to hope for. Solomon looks at these under the sun, gaining wealth, gathering wealth, something to do, longing for more, something to love, and asking these questions, this inquisitive silence, and he's left with nothing to hope for. All of them leave him unsatisfied, unhappy, non-joyous, not content. Nothing. He doesn't have any satisfaction. But again, here's the key to this whole passage. Back in verse 1. Under the sun. That's the key. Solomon is only looking under the sun. This unsatisfaction only comes when you search for meaning and search for stuff, search for something to do, something to love, and something to hope for under the sun. But in order to find satisfaction, we need to look beyond the sun, above the sun. And that's what we are celebrating here in a week. Jesus Christ's birth, coming from above the sun to under the sun. It's something to do, something to love, and something to hope for. Because under the sun, you will always be unsatisfied until you look beyond the sun to Jesus Christ.